Hello, welcome to the second part of our lecture on human resource management. With lecture one, we got up to recruitment, which is the process of attracting potential employees to apply for a particular job. After you've had the applicants, the next logical process is to pick or select the most qualified person for that particular position or job. So that takes us to selection as another major function of human resource management. So selection is the process of ascertaining the qualifications, experience, skills, knowledge, etc. of the applicant with the view of appraising his or her suitability for a job. So as I indicated with selection, you now want to verify the applications that have been submitted. You want to go through them and then compare the qualifications, the experience, skills, and knowledge of the applicants against the requirements of the job that you're seeking somebody to come and do. Okay, so that is the process known as selection. So the selection device that you're going to use as a human resource person must both be reliable and valid. The fact that you want to pick people and you have to use some process, rigorous process to pick the most qualified, doesn't mean any device or any strategy at all work. That is important that whatever strategy or method that you be using is first and foremost valid. Okay, so validity is a proof that a relationship exists between the selection device and some relevant job criteria. All right. So whatever method that you want to use, selection device that you want to use, there should be a proof that some relationship exists between that selection device and the kind of job that the person is coming to do. All right. For example, if you want to fill the vacancy of a security person, it may be logical to ask say job applicants to run some 100 meters, and probably the person who is first can be considered for that particular job. But that same criterion or that same device or method of selection may not be appropriate for a position of say, a secretary or a CEO of a company. All right. So I hope that is clear, because when it comes to the work of a security person, running could be an important part of that particular work. So as human resource practitioners, the selection device that you'll be using, there should be a way to justify that device has a relationship with the kind of work or assignment that person is coming to do. All right. The second thing is that the selection device must be reliable. So reliability is an indicator that the device measures the same thing consistently. All right. So if over the period we've used a device such as people running 100 meters and the first or the fastest is considered for the job, it must be proven over time that anytime we pick somebody who is first in that particular race, the person tends to perform better than picking somebody who is probably last or mid somewhere. All right. So there should be that reliability with that particular device. So first and foremost, the device must be valid. It must have some relationship with the vacancy or the job that the person is coming to do. And secondly, the device must be reliable. Anytime that we use that particular device, we should be expecting some consistent type of results from that particular device. So that is the element of reliability. All right. So we move to selection techniques. So for some, depending upon the type of employer, some may use all of these selection techniques. Some organizations may rely on just a few of them, and so on and so forth. But it's important that we know that for most organizations, you may have to go through all of this selection techniques. So the first one that is mostly used by most organizations is an application form. All right. It could be in the form of a letter or a form that you have to fill, indicating your willingness or interest in a particular vacancy in that particular organization. The next thing is to go through some series of tests. Assuming your application goes through the initial screening, then there will be some form of testing, and we'll be looking at some of them very soon to see whether your application, the details of the application might be okay, but it is also important that decisions are not just made based on the form that was filled, but you have to go through some series of tests to find out whether you are the competent or the most qualified for that particular job. All right. For some organizations, those tests could be different from interviews. So after the testing, if you pass the test, then you go through interviews. All right. Where it's largely oral interaction with a panel, also with the motive of finding out how suitable you are for that particular job. If you were to succeed at the interviewing stage, for some organizations, you have to go through health examinations. All right. So there are some positions that it is very, very important that you are healthy in order to be able to perform your role in those positions. So it is very, very important that you get medical clearance with regards to your health before you can finally get the nod. Then finally, for some sensitive position, we have what is known as reference checking. All right. Normally, the application form will request for references. So some organizations takes the pain to go and find out, cross-check with your referees, this type of person that you are, your character, your behavior, and all those things. For some positions, it may interest you to know that some employers go as far back as your primary school or senior high school to find out from your teachers, if they can find any, the type of attitude and behaviors that you exhibited whilst at school. All right. So reference checking is also an important part of trying to select the most competent or qualified person for a particular position. Okay. So it's very, very important to pay attention to how you behave, because this could be very, very important in your chance of getting a particular job or position in the future. Okay. So we spoke about tests, that after your application form, some organization will subject you to various forms of tests. All right. The one that is very, very common nowadays is the aptitude test, where they may give you about 100 questions and give you just 30 minutes to be able to gauge your understanding as to certain things. But all of that falls under these categories of tests that we'll be looking at. Okay, so we have the first one, integrity test. So depend upon the position that you're applying to occupy, your integrity, all right, your honesty could be very, very important in determining whether your suitability for that particular position. So some organizations will subject you to what is known as integrity test. All right, how it is done could vary from organization to organization. There are instances where employees would be employees were even given letters, and this integrity tests were undertaken during the period of their probation. All right. So probationary period periods that the employers still have the right to terminate your appointment without any serious consequences, because you are not yet a permanent employee of the organization. So sometimes integrity tests could be conducted at that point in time to find out how honest you are as a person, because probably the position that you'll be occupying requires somebody who is honest and has a lot of integrity. So it's very, very, very important. So it may, as I said, it may not be that it is conducted before you are employed. Some organizations, even after you've been given the letter of engagement, this integrity test could still be conducted to find out how honest you are as a person. So it's very, very important that we pay attention to our integrity and how honest we live our lives. All right. Then there is also personality test. All right. So once again, this also depends on the type of job that you're going to do or applying for. So there may be certain type of jobs that require certain type of personality. Okay. Are you somebody who can work under pressure? Are you somebody who can communicate well? Are you somebody who can relate well, and so on and so forth? So depend upon the position, some organizations will be interested in picking people of particular type of personality. And it is important that you know the type of job and probably the likely personality that will go, the type of personality that will go with that particular type of position or job. It is important because it's not just about competence, but sometimes the personality is far, far more important than the competence that you can exhibit at a job. Okay, so if, for example, if you are at the front desks of most organizations, you must be somebody who can smile, somebody who can relate well with people, even when you are under pressure. All right. So it is not so much about your ability to do the work there, but in those positions, your demeanor and personality tends to be far more important than your competence. So that is also tested in some organizations. Then we have the common one, which is the knowledge test. All right, this is where we want to find out, or employers will want to know the level of knowledge that you have on that particular job. Okay, so they will test you. If there's an accounting job, they want to know whether you know anything about accounting at all, accountancy. If there's any type of job at all, your knowledge will be tested. Sometimes it may not be a specific specialized area, and therefore they may want to test your numeracy and your ability to comprehend issues and so on and so forth. So the aptitude test and in their varied form will normally fall under what is known as knowledge test. So it's very, very important to also know the subject matter for which you are applying for a particular job. All right. Then finally, we have performance simulation test. So it normally takes place in assessment centers. This is where you are given an environment to actually demonstrate the work that you're coming to do. All right. So for example, if we are applying to become a lecturer or a teacher, you may be given the opportunity to actually present a lesson for your assessors to find out whether you have the ability to teach. Okay. If there's a secretarial job, they may give you a laptop nowadays to type a letter or a memo or something of that sort for them to see how competent you are to be able to do that particular job. So you are given an atmosphere that looks like the real job that you come in to do. And then based on your performance, they can gauge and find out how likely you will be performing when you are finally given the nod to occupy that particular position. Okay. So these are the testing methods that could be employed in order to select the most competent or suitable person. All right. So with the interview also, I summarized by saying earlier on that it's a form of oral conversation. So it's a formal, in-depth conversation conducted to evaluate an applicant's suitability. All right. So the forms cannot, or written statement, really, you can't prove them that much. What is written is written. All right. But interviews gives the employer or the interviewer the opportunity to be able to get more information beyond what is written in the application form or letter. So it's an in-depth conversation with the aim of finding out whether the applicant is indeed suitable for the job he or she is applying for. All right. So we have forms of interviews. We have about 3 types. We have the structured interview, we have the semi-structured interview, and we have the unstructured interview. Okay, so as the name suggests, with a structured interview, all applicants will normally go through the same set of questions. So we have some list of questions, say question 1 to 10, and every applicant is supposed to provide some responses to these questions. So the questions are structured. The interviewer normally will not have the opportunity to probe further or to ask any probing questions beyond what has been written. All right. Then we have the semi-structured. This is where the interviewer, beyond the written questions, has the opportunity to probe further, most of the time based on the response of the applicant or the interviewee. They are able to interrogate their responses further. All right. So that is the semi-structured type of interviews. Then we have the third one, which is unstructured. Okay. So with unstructured, There are no set of questions for the interviewer. So it depends on maybe the information they find in your application form or your CV or whatever. All right. The response that you give, that will determine the type of questions that you'll be asked. So there are no list of questions, but each applicant is likely to be subjected to different sets of questions depending upon what they find on your CV or what they think they should ask you. All right. So that type of interview is what is known as the unstructured interview. But for all these three interviews, there are three broad questions that the interviewers may be seeking answers for, okay, or two. The first one is, can the applicant do the job? So whether it's structured, semi-structured, or unstructured, the motive of the interviewers is to find out whether the applicant can do the job. All right. Point two looks like point one, but they are not the same. Will the applicant do the job? So can is about whether you have the qualification, you have the experience, and so on and so forth. Will the applicant do the job is about your motivation. You may have the qualifications, you may have the experience, but you may not be motivated enough to give off your best for that particular organization. So interviewers will not just be looking at the can, which is the qualifications that you present, but they are also interested in how motivated you are as an individual in terms of coming to help the organization meet its goals. Okay, so as if you're going for a job, that is these two questions are very, very important. Sometimes you may raise red flag of discrimination because you think you have maybe higher or better qualifications than somebody else. But that is just question one. Can you do it? Okay. It is possible that the person that didn't have much qualifications as you was able to demonstrate question two much better than you. He was able to show that he's more willing, he's more motivated to do the job. Probably he's more teachable, all right? He is more willing to learn on the job than you who had the qualifications for that particular position. So it is not just about can the applicant do the job, but interviewers or potential employers are thinking about will the applicant do the job? All right. Then the last point, how does the applicant compare with others who are being considered for the job? So they will then compare you with other applicants based on the earlier two questions to find out who really satisfies us in terms of can do the job and will be willing to do the job. All right. To make their decisions as to who is most competent for the job. Okay. So if you are successful with selection and you are picked for the organization, the next function or duty of the human resource management unit is to do what is known as placement. So it's the process of assigning the selected candidate with the most suitable job. It is matching of job specification with job requirements. So this is a very, very important role of human resource management. All right. If they get this wrong, they may have employed the right person, but the person will not be able to perform because they actually placed the person at the wrong job. Okay, they gave the person the wrong job, a job that did not meet the qualifications, the experience, and the abilities of the person. All right, so it's very, very important that you match the job specification with the job requirement for the position that the person is going to do or perform in a particular organization. So placement is key in ensuring that employees are able to perform well. So after selecting the person, you need to place the employee at the right place. Okay. Then the next role is orientation. So it's the provision of new employees with basic information about the employer and the organization. So it's very, very important, all right? Especially if there's external recruitment, the employee might have no knowledge at all about the organization. In fact, basic stuff, things about who their boss is, who their subordinates are, and so on and so forth, maybe things that the person will not know. So it's important that there is some form of orientation for these new employees, for them to have some basic information about their employer and the organization. Okay, so after orientation, there is also the need for training. All right, so training is a systematic process by which employees learn skills, knowledge, abilities, or attitudes to further organizational and personal goals. Okay, so it's very, very important. Nowadays, there's a lot of contention between industry and academia. And the argument is that academia do not prepare students enough for industry. As much as there's some point in that, the real issue, contention is that it is also very, very important that industry prepares, is ready to actually train new employees. Okay, the essence of tertiary education or university education most of the time is to provide general knowledge and to make people more teachable. All right, so it is very, very difficult for, say, a university or a tertiary institution to know the specific skill set that is required for all the vacancies that exist in this world. So no matter how competent, no matter how intelligent somebody is, after the person has been employed, it will still be necessary for the organization to take the pains to take the person through some form of training, at least some training that is organization specific. Okay, when it comes to education, normally we speak in general terms. We explain concepts in general terms, but the organization might have its own way of addressing issues. They might have some peculiar software that they use in that particular organization, and so on and so forth. So the person might have had first class and so on and so forth, but after all of that, it is still necessary that some form of training is done for these new employees in order to equip them with the skills and knowledge set required, especially based on the requirement of the organization or the employer. Okay. So training is designed to ensure that new employees has the basic knowledge required to perform the job satisfactorily. All right, so we've touched on that. So the types of training include on-the-job training, off-the-job training. So these are the two major types of training. And the name suggests, provide some clue as to the meaning. On-the-job training is where you are being trained while still at work or at post. Okay, so whilst you are working, your superior or your boss is teaching you certain things. All right. Off-the-job training is where the training is done elsewhere. So example of on-the-job training is normally what is known as apprenticeship. Right. So you have a subordinate that follows his superior or boss for a long period of time. And most of the time by observation, right, they are able to pick up some lessons from this superior, and they learn the job whilst working at it. All right. Off-the-job training, example of that is classroom training. Okay, so you go somewhere, then some lessons are presented off the job, but it is expected that when you finally come to work, you'll be able to exhibit the new knowledge that was given to you during the classroom training. Okay, so these are the types of training that we have. Changes that signal need for employees training. So at what point should HR be interested in training employees? All right, the first one is the obvious one. If it's a new employee, then definitely some training must be done, whether the person had a first class, a third class, and I've given the reason why that must be done. Okay, but beyond that, there are other factors that call for the need for employees training. So the first one is introduction of new equipment or processes. Okay, once there is a new equipment or processes, what it means is that employees might not be familiar with this new equipment or processes, and therefore it is important that some training sessions are organized in order to educate employees on this new equipment and processes. All right. Point two, a change in employees' job responsibilities. So if you want to change the responsibilities of an employee, then it makes sense that the employee is giving some training on the new responsibilities that he or she is supposed to pick up. All right. So it's almost like anytime something new is supposed to be done, the employee is supposed to go through some training in order to keep them abreast with the requirement of the new assignment. Okay. 3, a drop in an employee's productivity or the quality of output. So once the employee's productivity is falling or the quality of the employee's output is diminishing, it's a signal that that employee needs some form of training. Okay. An increase in safety violations or accidents. Yes, so it has something to do with, say, the equipment, how they handle and use equipment, machines in the organization, and so on and so forth. Once there are a lot of safety violations and accidents, probably some training is required and for them to minimize or do away with these forms of accidents. Then finally, when there are customer complaints or complaints from co-workers, it basically means sometimes the complaint might be, say, poor quality output. The complaint might be how they relate with customers, or any form the complaint takes gives an opportunity for tailor-made training to address those complaints that were raised by either customers or co-workers. Okay, so these changes here signal the need for employees training. So there are 2 very similar concepts, but they are not the same. So we're going to look at the differences between training and development. All right, training and development. So the differences could come in terms of time horizon, objective, degree of participation, level, and finally duration. Okay, with the time horizon, training is meant for current needs. So we train employees in order to help them to address some current work challenges or current needs for the current job that they are doing. Okay, so when it comes to the time horizon, it's for the immediate need of the organization or the employee. Where development is future oriented. So if you are developing an employee, the knowledge and the skill set that is given to the employee is not something that is needed immediately. All right, it's something that particular employee may be using in future if it's finally promoted to occupy those higher positions. So development is future oriented, but training is meant to address current needs or problems. What is the objective for training? Is to provide new and existing employees with the basic SKS, which are skills, knowledge, and abilities needed to do the job. So it targets both new and existing employees with basic skills, knowledge, and abilities that is needed to do the job. Okay, with development, it's meant to provide existing employees with skills, knowledge, and abilities to assume a higher office. Okay, so it's very related to time horizon, where we said it's future oriented. So the skills, knowledge, and abilities that are given to employees are meant to help them to assume a higher office in the future. Okay, degree of participation, when it is training, it is compulsory, all right? Because it's meant to help you deal with current problems and issues. With development, it is optional. Okay, some people may choose not to grow. They don't want to occupy any higher position, and you cannot force them to do so. So development is optional, but training is compulsory. The level trainings are conducted for lower managers, level managers, whilst development normally targets middle to top level managers. Okay. Duration training are conducted on short-term basis. So training could be a day, a week, and it's done. But with development are conducted on long-term basis. Okay, so development could take years. All right, if you're seeking to develop and prepare somebody for a higher position, that is done over a long-term basis and not short-term basis. All right. So we move to the next important function of human resource manager, which is compensating employees. So compensation refers to all job-related payments, including wages, commission, insurance, and time off. All right. So after you've employed a person, you've selected, you've placed the person, you've oriented the person, you've trained the person. All of that boils down to the money. All right. They must also be compensated well. So it could be wages, it could be commission, it could be insurance or time off. Yes, this is also critical if you want to get the best out of your employees. So the modes of compensation, you could use hourly wage system. Okay, so where payments are made based on hours worked. You could use piece wage system, where payment is made based on units of production. All right, so it depends upon the kind of work. If it is service will normally use hourly wage system, where you are paid based on the number of hours that you've worked. If there's manufacturing or something that like you need to produce something tangible, like in manufacturing or construction sort of industry, they can use piece wage system. That doesn't mean they can't use hourly wage system. They may choose to use that as well. All right. So we have the hourly wage system, we have the piece wage system, then we have the incentive pay systems, where if you go beyond the standard requirement, be it in hours or the piece wage system, some additional payments or rewards are made to the employee. Okay, so these are the three broad modes of compensation: hourly, piece wage system, and incentive pay systems. Okay, then beyond compensation, employees also enjoy certain benefits. So HR need to be mindful of the concept of employee benefits. So employee benefits are supplement to wages and salaries. It may be legally mandated or optional. All right. So some of the requirements may be optional. Others are by law that employers must provide those things to their employees. The optional benefits helps to build employee loyalty and could include health insurance. So depending upon the jurisdictions, elsewhere health insurance may be mandatory or legally required. Elsewhere it could be optional. Okay, so health insurance, vacations, sick leave, personal days off, and so on and so forth are optional benefits. Then we have what is known as stock options. Okay, so instead of probably giving employees bonuses in the form of cash or money, the company can decide to give employees some of the shares of the company. Okay, so they give the company some of the shares or stocks of the company, and that makes employees share holders of the company. The whole idea is that now the company becomes like part of them, and they may be more willing to exert a little bit more in order to help the organization achieve, or the company achieve, its objective. So stock options are some of the optional benefits available to employees. Then bonuses. If they choose not to give stock options, they could also pay money as bonuses once they exceed some targets in a particular year. Okay. HR must also be mindful. Human resource management division must be mindful of the concepts or their role of occupational health and safety. Occupational health and safety. So occupational health and safety is a cross-discipline area concerned with protecting the health, safety, and welfare of people engaged in work or employment. So very, very important because of the legal implications. All right. Most labor laws will make provision for accidents at the workplace. And if the person is an employee, it makes the whole thing far more difficult in terms of the cost that the organization must bear. So to avoid all that, the human resource division of every organization must pay attention to organizational health and safety. All right, in order to foster safe work environment. It will cut away a lot of lawsuits. okay, either coming from workers or people, visitors, clients, or customers that come to the workplace. It's important to keep the workplace safe in order to avoid some legal consequences that could come as a result of workplace accidents. Then there is also the function of performance appraisal. All right. After all is said and done, the person has been paid well, the workplace has been safe, and there have been incentive packages and so on and so forth. It is time now to assess or appraise the employee to find out whether it was worth it, paying all those monies and going through all those training and development stuff that we've discussed. Okay, so HR also undertake the function of performance appraisal or the activity of performance appraisal. So it's a formal structured system designed to measure the actual job performance of an employee against designated performance standard. So when you were employing the person, you had some standards. Okay, these things could be found in the job description. You had the description of what the person was supposed to do. Okay, after a period of time, it is important to assess, to evaluate, and find out whether the employee is doing that which has been stated or spelled out in the job description. All right, very, very important. So the importance of performance appraisal. First, it can be used to justify promotions, transfers, and terminations. All right. After the performance appraisal, if the person excels and is doing very well, then it can serve as the base for promotions. All right. If the person is not doing well, probably it's because the person has been wrongly placed. So it could provide a reason for transfers to places that meets the person's specification of a particular employee. Or it could be that the person is not just good, and therefore it should be dismissed, or his appointment should be terminated in that particular organization. All right. So performance appraisal can be used for these three purposes. Second, it can be used to identify training needs. Once the person is not meeting the standards, he's not able to do what he's supposed to do, it could be that the person needs some training. I think we've addressed that also. So performance appraisal can help to identify training needs of employees. Third, it can help provide feedback to employees on their performance. So that's obvious. After the performance appraisal, there must be some meeting, okay, between the appraiser and an appraisee, or the employee and whoever conducted the appraisal, in order to provide some feedback to employee as to areas where the person falls short of and how to improve upon these areas. Part of the feedback is probably to commend the employee in areas that the person has done well, and so on and so forth. All right, where the employee has exhibited some excellence, it is important that that is also acknowledged during the performance appraisal review. Then determining necessary pay adjustment. So if there's positive, if the result was okay, then probably we can assume the adjustment should be pay increment, right? But if you didn't do well, it could also mean that probably your pay and some packages, incentives must probably be cut off because you didn't meet the requirements of the performance appraisal. All right. Okay. There's also the concept of collective bargaining that HR practitioners need to be aware of, because really it serves as the legal document that later on, if there's any form of misunderstanding, the courts will largely be relying on, and human resource managers as well, will largely be relying on that in order to determine how to resolve that particular problem. Okay, so collective bargaining consists of the process of negotiation between representatives of the union and employers generally represented by management. All right. So the working conditions will normally be determined through the process known as collective bargaining. All right. So we have unions representing employees. Then we have employers normally represented by management. there will be series of meetings and negotiations and discussions to reach some level of agreement regards to the working conditions. All right. So finally, when an agreement is reached, after the negotiation, that document is known as collective bargaining agreement or collective employment agreement. All right. So based on basic law of contracts, contract tenants, once we agreed, once you had the opportunity to debate the issues and there's an agreement, then it becomes problematic if any of these parties now want to renege or go against the terms of the agreement that were reached. Okay, so collective bargaining agreements are very important documents that during the negotiation stage, all parties must make sure that their interests are well covered, because once an agreement has been reached, it becomes a contract that either or both parties must actually respect, and the courts tend to honor the tenets of collective bargaining agreements a lot. Okay. So by all means, once there will be some negotiation to reach agreements, most of the time there could be conflict. And so we want to look at types of conflict resolutions. When there's confusion between union and management, how do they go around it? So one way is to use negotiation. So dialogue intended to resolve disputes among the parties, all right? The parties that are in conflict can negotiate and dialogue among themselves to resolve the dispute. If they are not successful at that, they may rely on a third party. So that's the second stage, which is mediation. All right. So if they want to reach some agreement, maybe working conditions, and they are not able to come together to reach those agreements, they may resort to a third party to help them reach that agreement through a process known as mediation. All right. Mediation, the only difference between mediation and arbitration is that even though with mediation and arbitration, they both involve a third party, the agreement that is reached during mediation is not binding, all right? It's not legally binding on the parties. So the third party can come and they will negotiate and agree on certain terms, but later on, one of the parties may decide not to honor that. But if it is arbitration, the agreement once reached have some legal effect and become legally binding on the parties, and therefore they have to be honored. Okay, so that's the difference. Right, once we're talking about negotiation and agreements, it is important for us to also understand the power dynamics when it comes to conflict, when it comes to negotiations and agreements in an organization. So here we're going to look at the sources of power, all right? In an organization. We have to know this because this subtly plays a role when it comes to being able to negotiate as an employee and seeking for what you are due. All right. We have what is known as reward power. So it stems from the leader's authority to provide subordinates with various rewards. Okay. So once somebody's in a position to be able to reward you, to determine your promotion, to determine the appointment that you can get in an institution or an organization, then definitely they tend to have some power over you. All right. So we have what is known as reward power. Okay. Almost the opposite of that is what is known as coercive power. So it stems from the leader's ability to punish or withhold rewards. So reward power is when they can reward you. Coercive power is the ability to punish you or to withhold rewards. And they are all forms of power that leaders use or people in authority use to control and manipulate their subordinates. So coercive means they have the ability to punish you. So when you're dealing with them, you are careful because of this particular power. Then we have what is known as legitimate power. It comes from a formal management position in an organization and the authority delegated to that position, right? So it's the power that comes because of the position that you hold in an organization. And based on that position should command that type of reverence and that type of obedience or power, all right? So if he's the CEO or he's the head of department, regardless of reward and cohesive power, because he's the head of department. The headship also comes with some form of reference or some power. Okay, so that is what is known as legitimate power. All right, the power is coming because of the position the person holds in that particular organization. All right, then we have what is known as expert power. All right, so it stems from the leader's skills, special knowledge, and special abilities. All right, so you can also have power because of the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities that you have. All right, yeah, and it plays this type of power plays role in so many circumstances. All right, yeah. So I don't know whether you've been in a car somewhere and the car developed a fault and all that, and all of you had to push. The driver who didn't have any qualification was the one driving the car whilst you were down there pushing the car. All right, or some mechanic came and had to instruct you guys to lift some things and stuff like that. They are able to provide these instructions because at that point in time they had the knowledge as to how to fix the car. Okay, so whenever you have knowledge, you have certain abilities and expertise in a particular environment, it tends to give you what is known as expert power. All right. Then finally, we have what is known as reverent power. So it stems from the leader's personality characteristics that command followers' identification, respect, and admiration, so they wish to emulate the leader. All right. So this time around, it's not based on your position. It's not based on the fact that you can reward. It's not based on your ability to punish your subordinates or followers. It's just because they admire your personality. All right. They admire your character, and therefore they respect you for who you are. All right. Because of your personality characteristics, they want to identify with you. They like your lifestyle, they like your character, they like your personality, and they want to follow you, not because they want reward or because they are afraid, but they just like your personality. All right. And this is where we must all aspire to get to, so that you don't have power just because you occupy in a position. Most of the time, whether reward or coercive is related to legitimate power as well, right? Once you have the position, you can then have the reward or the coercive part. But get to the point where you command what is known as reverent power, and you have people to follow and obey your directives because they just admire your personality. All right. Okay. So workforce diversity is becoming a trending issue in human resource management and in all organizations, right? So diversity stresses on equality in employment and related issues. It promotes inclusive employee engagement irrespective of race, gender, age, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, and so on and so forth. So it's very, very important that organizations and human resource practitioners pay attention to the concept of workforce diversity, okay? With the global environment, if you're in Ghana, you don't always have to assume that all the employees in your organization will be Ghanaians. Any country at all that you are, we have become a global village, and you need to pay attention to differences in race, in gender, in disability, and so on and so forth, and make provision to make everybody comfortable in the organization. There are benefits with paying attention to workforce diversity. First, a diverse workforce enhances creativity and problem solving. Why? Because you have people coming from different environment, background, different thinking, and therefore they can help the organization to be more creative and solve problems more easily. All right. It can help attract and retain talent because they will not feel discriminated against. They will be treated based on their competencies and their abilities and knowledge, and not because of their tribe or where they are coming from, their religion, and so on and so forth. It will not be the basis of how they will be treated in that particular organization. All right. It will help the organization to save money on litigation expenses. All right. Once there is some form of the unfair discrimination, it provides grounds for legal suits. And so you want to avoid that as much as possible to respect the differences that exist at the workplace and also actually respect workforce diversity so that you can save money on litigation. Point 4, it increases productivity due to diverse talent. So it's similar to point 1, creativity and problem solving. Once you bring people with different expertise, knowledge, background, all things being equal, that can lead to more enhanced productivity. It increases market share through the creation of a satisfied, diverse customer base. All right. So whatever race I am, whatever tribe I am, once I can find somebody similar to me in your organization, it is easier for me to identify with that organization and probably buy the products and services of that particular organization than an organization that I can't find my race, my kind. That's the point. Okay, we can't do away with that. That is how human beings reason. All right, and I remember when it comes to football, Ghanaians at some point in time were all Chelsea fans because of Michael Essien. Okay, yeah, before him, probably few of us knew that Chelsea, there was a football team known as Chelsea. All right, and they have been, it's a club that is conscious about that, and they have tried as much as possible to encourage diversity in that particular football organization. So they are able to attract support from different parts of the world. And I think with Man United too, they had an Asian player, is it Song or one of those guys. And that really boosted their support base in Asia, because the people in Asia could actually identify with that particular type of football club. Okay, so in a typical organization, it can help boost the customer base because you will be able to attract customers from diverse backgrounds and orientations. Okay. Yes, so continue with some of the contemporary staffing issues that human resource managers must deal with. Apart from workforce diversity, point 2, managing workforce diversity, downsizing is becoming very, very important. Organizations are now thinking of becoming leaner and leaner in order to become more productive and effective. All right, so that's becoming a topical issue. Sexual harassment is becoming a major issue nowadays because it has negative consequences on productivity in organization. All right, so most organizations now have what is known as sexual harassment policy that will define how people can relate with each other at the workplace. Then we have surveillance and control at work. Okay, it's becoming a very challenging topic because of the issue of privacy. Okay, you want to make sure people do the right thing at the workplace, less thievery or stealing at the workplace and so on and so forth. But at the same time, you have to respect the privacy of your employees and workers. Okay, so surveillance and control at work is becoming a topical issue, a contemporary staffing issue that HR practitioners are paying attention to. Then organizational and individual stress. So stress management is also a very, very thorny and important subject that human resource managers must pay attention to. Okay, so there are all manner of arrangements being made to reduce the stress of employees, all right, at the workplace. Then close to that is work-life balance, all right? So you shouldn't just be interested in productivity at work, but how is the person faring? The well-being of the person related to stress is something that HR practitioners need to pay attention to, all right? So you need to provide a balance between the working life and the real life of employees in an organization. Then finally, there is the issue of whistleblowing and morality at work. Okay, how do we protect employees that are ethically conscious against people that really want to do evil in organizations? That is the role of human resource management. And in most organizations are In fact, countries have whistleblowing laws and acts that are meant to protect people that are ethically minded and conscious and will be willing to disclose information of any wrongdoing about their own organizations. So that is another contemporary staffing issue that HR practitioners must pay attention to. All right. So on this note, we've come to the end of our lecture on human resource management. I hope you enjoyed it, and this will ignite your interest in learning further the subject of human resource management. Thank you very much for your attention.